Having faith is complicated, especially in a world that presents us with challenges throughout our lives. Many of us, very reasonably, may be questioning the nature or even existence of God in the face of tornadoes and tropical storms, police lynchings of Black Americans, a devastating explosion in Lebanon, a global pandemic that isn't letting up. The violence we inflict on each other and on the planet, and the destruction the planet wreaks on us, can be hard to have faith, but it isn't impossible. In the depths of the Great Depression, the lives of those living in this country were shaped by a trifecta of economic, public health, and environmental disasters. And yet, in early 1933, President-elect Franklin Delano Roosevelt relied on his own faith to jumpstart his administration and his people. Right before his inauguration, together with his closest family, friends, and advisors, including his entire cabinet, Roosevelt participated in a special prayer service. He said, "A thought to God is the right way to start off my administration. It will be the means to bring us out of the depths of despair." According to historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, who wrote about that moment in her book, Leadership in Turbulent Times, after the 20-minute service came to an end, Roosevelt remained on his knees, his face cupped in his hands. Later that morning, as he waited in the Capitol for the ceremony to begin, the president-elect improvised a new opening sentence to his address. "This is a day of national consecration." Clearly, the address he was about to deliver was a civil sermon designed to provide the larger purposes that would bind the people together as a sacred obligation. Thinking of God can bring us out of the depths, can transport us away from our difficulties, and can bring us together, as Roosevelt hoped it would for his administration and the people of the United States. But I'll be honest, faith in God alone isn't enough to comfort me. My brain won't let it. I need something else. I think that my heart needs faith in other people, too. And it may sound crazy, but I think that's something God recognizes in us, that we can't just believe in God or love God and have that be enough. In this week's Torah portion, Parashat Eikev, we rejoin Moses' farewell address to the Israelites. This week, he reminds the people yet again of God's command to love the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. God wants us to love the stranger, and not out of love for God, but out of shared experience and shared humanity. This is a time of year when those of us who think about God, even a little bit, are thinking about what God wants of us or needs from us. We are in what are known as the 7 weeks of Consolation, the time between Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah. The holidays bookending this period commemorate destruction and rebirth. But how do we make our way from the one to the other? Well, we follow the words of the prophet Isaiah in the Haftarah portions of these weeks. In the Haftarah for Parashat Eikev, Isaiah speaks of his sacred duty to express his faith in God by comforting other people. Adonai, God, gave me a skilled tongue to know how to speak timely words to the weary. Morning by morning, God rouses my ear. God rouses Isaiah to remind the people of God's own faith in them. And if God has faith in us, perhaps we can have faith in one another too. President Roosevelt's faith in God connected directly to his faith in people and in the power of connection to lift us from the depths of despair. We hear this in his prayer on his inaugural day. Now, I'm not suggesting that we need a culture of public prayer in this country, but maybe we need a culture of public faith, faith in the kindness, care, and presence of one another. We do have contemporary prophets leading the way. Rabbi Buchdahl told us in a meditation session last month about Patrick Hutchinson, The Black London man who, with his friends, carried a white anti-BLM protester to safety when that man was injured at a Black Lives Matter march. When asked about this radical act of kindness, Hutchinson said, "If the other 3 police officers that were standing around when George Floyd was murdered had thought about intervening and stopping their colleague from doing what he was doing, like what we did, George Floyd would be alive today still. We saved a life today." Hutchinson gives me faith in other people. And we don't even have to look across an ocean for examples. In the face of the fear and isolation caused by COVID, a team of Central congregants called fellow members to check in, to offer consolation and comfort and connection. And our incredible live stream community on Facebook reached out and cared for one another in a similar way, checking in on their friends within this community across the globe. And there's Greg Wagner, a Central congregant who I think is celebrating a birthday, who sewed 350 masks and gave them away to those who needed them through the first several months of the pandemic. His masks made their way to friends and friends of friends and even to strangers. Among the recipients of Greg's masks were the ICL Veterans Residence in Long Island City, Sunnyside Community Services Elder Care Program, and the clients and staff of AHRC, a New York organization serving those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. He also distributed 112 masks to the participants in Central's own breakfast program. When I asked him to tell me about this incredible act of compassion, he told me the workers who used them loved them. They're mostly women of color. My friend who works at AHRC brought masks and muffins to staff. He said they cried when he delivered them. They so appreciated that someone was thinking about them and cared. And finally, as recently as this week, hundreds of friends and family members and neighbors opened their arms and took us in when our homes lost power or sustained damage in Tropical Storm Isaias. The poet Shaul Chernikovsky wrote, "Laugh at me, for I shall believe in humanity." In the face of all the horrors and injustices of the world, my heart insists on believing in humanity. That's where I am putting my faith. Shabbat Shalom.